Hi everyone, welcome back to day 5 of Kate's Puzzle Vlogmas, and hello my dog. So we are going to be going through the puzzle today, Santa's Stack of Books. How cute is that design? Oh, I love these designs. That's why I went straight for it. Not only is it puzzles, but it's bookish puzzles. It's just such a sweet idea. And the fact that it's in like a giant book and it looks like a library definitely helps. So before I get started on the puzzle, because you know I get very distracted, we're going to talk some books. And let's talk about a stack of books. I have recently been going very mad. So this is like my fantasy section. This is more going into crime. But over here, this shelf right here, and I am going to do a book tour, so don't you worry, is basically full of nonfiction. I have been getting more and more into nonfiction. I mean, I still love reading fiction, do not get me wrong. I do love a good fiction read, but I am really becoming quite adoring of nonfiction and the tales and stories it can provide. So I always participate in Nonfiction November. So I decided this video would be marvelous if I go through the books I read during November this year for Nonfiction November, because I didn't do a TBR in the end. I didn't do any videos for it. But then I'm also going to go through the books that I'm really excited about. And ones that are new, ones that I've received before, or ones I want to reread because I feel like I need that information back in my brain again. I need it to be refreshed and I needed to make sure that it's current. But let's go through what I did read. So I started off Nonfiction November with Waterlog by Robert Deakin. Now I am a big lover of Robert Macfarlane. He writes the most beautiful books and he was very good friends with Roger Deakin. Roger Deakin unfortunately has since passed away, but he wrote this book back in the late 90s. I think it was published 99 or early 2000s, and it's basically exploring Britain through its waterways. And at the time, especially because it's highly commercialized, people were slowly moving away from all the chemicals and everything in the land, and also they were kind of realizing the fact that nature was being greatly affected by much of the agricultural industry that was happening during the 80s and into the 90s. And so he's a swimmer and he wanted to travel through England. He was feeling very lonely ever since he separated from his partner, and his son moved to Australia, of all places, to chase the beach and the sand. And he wanted to explore Britain in a way that hasn't been done, not just through the roads and the towns and the cities, but he actually wanted to explore the waterways, the canals, the rivers, the lakes, the lochs, the moats, even the bays. He does do a few river mouths as well. And it's just wonderful. I can really see where Robert Macfarlane's literary style came from and where it was inspired. It's such a beautiful, slow-moving book, and also one that he's feeling a lot of challenges with. So it's always wonderful to be in someone's head and also understanding what they're going through at the time and what is challenging them in this moment. I mean, it's not easy to swim across a giant freezing cold bay of water. There is always saying that it's a mental challenge coming with that physical exertion. So it was really lovely to read this. It was such a beautiful exploration of England and also of a person, and he was just so generous with his writing. So I definitely recommend, if you do read Robert Macfarlane or you have in the past come across his works, definitely also consider Roger Deakin. Feeling very inspired by the water of Roger Deakin's Waterlogged, I decided to read Fathoms, The World in a Whale by Rebecca Griggs. This is actually an Australian writer. She received a lot of accolades for this, and I picked it up knowing it was very much my thing. And I just never got around to reading it until now. I just felt it was time. And the best thing was, it was the perfect moment to read this. I just read a very personal account of someone traveling through water, the human experience with water. And then this one is about the human experience with marine life, specifically whales, and why there is such a connection to whales and why we feel so deeply connected to this marine animal, and the way we move from there. It's just beautiful, but it's also showing how endangered they are how, you know, there is this majesty and this awe surrounding whales, but at the same time, we're not doing anything to really help their environment and not doing anything to help the issues that they're facing. We're just thinking, oh yeah, it's fine, we're not whaling them anymore. But there's so much more in the world that's happening. The world is so interconnected that there's so many more things we could be doing. So this was such a beautiful book. It's very personal as well. Rebecca Griggs has always been fascinated with whales, and ever since she was very young. I thought that was really sweet. And it's just wonderful how we have this such deep abiding connection to nature, and how in many respects that is being lost in a digital age in a way. This awe, we can see it on the screen with the David Attenborough documentary, but it doesn't end there. They're still out there in the world. It's not just on our screens for our entertainment. So yeah, it's just really interesting to read how the world and the humans interact with the wild places and animals that exist in those spaces. So it's a beautiful book. I definitely recommend, especially if you like anything to do with whales. It's a really good current read, really to drive home how we are currently viewing nature, and it's very, very interesting. My last one that kind of filtered over into December, I mean the first, maybe the second, I finished it on the second. It's called Bite Back by Hannah Ferguson. Now, Hannah Ferguson is very much an Australian media person. So she actually started off Cheek Media Co. And that is a way of her basically fighting back against a highly conservative, highly populist media that is very much dominating Australia, unfortunately. And Bite Back is such a fascinating book. I mean, at no point, she opens and ends with basically saying, if you agree with everything in this book, that is wrong. It needs to question, it needs to actually spark some concept in you. It needs to spark some feeling that makes you question, am I doing that right? Is this okay? Do I agree with this? Because the whole point of her book and the reason why she started this media channel is that she wants to engage more in critical discussion, because no one's ever going to be coming from the same place, from the same experience, from the same emotional depth of feeling with different elements. But isn't it better to have a discussion to see where everyone lands in those moments? So I think it's such a really important book to make us not just fall into the, the binary, yes or no. Do I agree? Do I not agree? Do I think this has happened? Do I not think? It's like, it's actually asking us to continue to be examining media, any type of media, critically, to really think about what we're engaging with, and not just engage with one source of media, actually engage with many sources of media. So in order to have a greater diversity of voice, you need to have all sources of media available. And so this was just such an interesting read. She goes through many, many topics, and she's not an expert on any topic, but she's someone who's providing a perspective of interviewing the people who are the experts and really going down and critically trying to understand what the issues may be at the time. And so it's just such an interesting think piece, and it's such an interesting way of reigniting your way of engaging in the political, which is always present, and the media and anything like that, making sure you're constantly questioning, no, is this the way am I always going to be apathetic and just agreeing with what's happening? Or am I going to bite back? Am I going to fight back? Am I going to find other sources of media that make me think, is this correct? Maybe I need to be better informed. So yeah, this was such a really good read, because I love when nonfiction can make me question the way I do things and the way I see the world and the way I'm reacting to different things. And it makes me think, why am I doing that? Is this from a position of privilege? Because I am very easily in a position of privilege. And so I love when books and nonfiction and media can do that, can make me question, am I viewing this from a place of power? And can that power be shared? And can I see it from that other person's perspective? And in many cases, I would love to say yes, but some cases it's really hard. It's really hard to really try and get to the root of someone else's emotional center. And so yeah, that's all she's asking you to do, but it's really fascinating and very funny at times. I did find it very funny. A lot of Australian humour. She does play out a lot of the Australian politics, and it was just purely on point. It was wonderful. Okay, so these are the 3 books I read during November, and I'm going to do a quick wrap up of the books I'm very excited for. I'm probably not going to wait till November next year, let's be honest. I'm going to be reading them very soon, and I just cannot wait. So I will be definitely reading again Coming of Age in the War on Terror by Randa Abdel-Fattah. This was written as basically ever since 9/11, all these Islamic and Muslim people have grown up in this age of terror, and being understood or being recognized or criticized for their belief system because of that fear that 9/11 instilled in many people. So it's just coming from that perspective, and it's such an important one to consider other perspectives beyond what the main media is pushing at the time. So I saw Randa at a Adelaide Writers' Week, and it was just, her talk was beautiful. It was really, really informative, emotional, but really powerful. And so I just need to read this again. I read it quite a while ago, but I definitely want to pick it back up. Next is going to be an absolute joy. It's a blend of poetry, nature writing, and memoir, and that is 12 Words for Moss by Elizabeth Jane Burnett. Oh gosh, I don't know what the English Nature Prize is called. There's an English Nature Writing Prize. I can never remember what it's called, but this was on the list, and I read the blurb, and I'm just so excited to read it. Nature writing is the jam for me at the moment. In the last 2-3 years, I've been sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into nature writing, and this just sounds absolutely stunning. Speaking of nature writing / memoir, another one for me is going to be Landlines by Raynor Wynne. I read Salt Path at the start of the year, and it was divine. I loved it so much. And then I read Wild Silence as well. And Landlines, they're back on the road. They're hiking again, and it's actually a much longer journey. Instead of the southwest coast, instead of the southwest coast, it's actually going to be from north to south of England and the British Isles. So I think this is going to be absolutely beautiful to be back with Raynor and her partner Moth. And lastly, for this very long video, because I do need to do the puzzle as well, my goodness, I'm not giving myself time here, is Nick Lowe's Uprising. I went to New Zealand last year and I loved it. I still need to put up those videos. I weirdly didn't record as much because I was driving a lot, and I think that affected my recording. I did less recording than I normally would, but I do need to put the videos up. But I absolutely loved it. It was so beautiful, and the amount of hiking that we did was stunning. But I wanted to reconnect a little bit. So in November this year, or actually October this year, leading up to the first anniversary since my trip to New Zealand, I wanted to read a book about hiking, about New Zealand and about Māori. And this is actually, Nick Lowe follows Māori songlines of hiking through the Southern Alps in the South Island of New Zealand. And just that idea of following Māori song, oral tradition stories of how to navigate a mountain path is just stunning. I love oral tradition and storytelling in that capacity. So this is going to be a bit of hiking, a bit of Maori culture, and a bit of history as well. So I'm very, very excited. All right, so thank you for joining me for the bookish segment of this video. Now, for all you lovely puzzly people, let's get puzzling.